Hey, what's going on there, YouTube? This is SCL0320 representing JVS. I got Joe Johnson 030 behind the scenes on the camera with the quickness. He's the man. Because we're short on time, we're like 2 hours away back from home. As soon as we get home, it's gonna be time to do the Walking Dead premiere and spoiler reactions, live stream, and it's gonna be a lot. And so one thing that I really wanted to do once I got back home is I wanted to give y'all an authentic video that basically talks about all Easter eggs and all things you did not know are behind the scenes stuff, that kind of unknown knowledge from Batman versus Superman. But one thing about this, I'm not gonna go on the bias of whether this was a good movie, whether it's a bad movie, what the faults. I'm just giving you informal information based on the fact that I've seen the movie about 5 times now. And I have a pretty good gist of all the Easter eggs. I have a pretty good thought process on all the things that basically you might have missed. And so I'm trying to go as detailed as I can. We got 2 hours to flesh out this. I don't even know if we have enough camera footage, but I do the best of my ability. Sorry about the lighting, but when I get back home, I'll be able to add in certain content and certain pictures to be able to prove the facts of why I came up with all these different things. Okay, so off the gate, whether you knew it or not, I looked at an interview and a discussion from Zack Snyder, and as well as shout out to CK61938, who actually pointed out before I actually listened to the Zack Snyder interview, the way that they actually shot Batman versus Superman is stylized just like a comic book. Most comic books, you have one stanza that has like a defining event, and then you have another one that pays back to a flashback, and then most of the time you have like in small little bubbles in a gray kind of tint, somebody talking in the background, and that's the way that this actually picked up. So whether you know it or not, this is all spoilers, okay? So anything goes. If you've not seen the movie, go check it out for yourself, see if you like it. If you don't, either way, this will be able to give you some insight on things that you probably missed. Anyway, continue on. In the beginning of this movie, it had Batman talking, and he was describing a dream sequence that actually happened, but it was really based on factual information. They spent a lot of emphasis on showing like the death of his parents, and then they go showing him in the woods after that point, and then they jump to Metropolis in black words with the white stanza, and then go and shift to 18 months later, and then you find out when the movie picks back up, this is even 6 months later, because it has this young guy that's in the water, and he goes and picks up something from the water. Inside the water, he ends up finding the biggest chunk of kryptonite. And we know it's kryptonite based on the hint and the tone, but it's actually from the World Engine. So the first Man of Steel movie, the World Engine that was on the other side of the world, that was pumping in everything, that had those tentacle arms, that Superman, basically in the atmospherics of it, it was almost killing him. For whatever reason, the thing that actually powered that thing was actually, I guess, what they call kryptonite. So instead of it being radioactive pieces of his home world, it was part of this engine, which is fine. But one of the things I want to describe is the fact that everything that I described up until that point is all out of place. There's a lot of different pacing related issues that you can define it as a filmmaker or even as a critic that didn't make sense. But from a standpoint of a comic book, that's the same exact concept of why they did it that way, okay? I just wanted to let y'all know that Zack Snyder confirmed that, as well as even if you look at the whole scope of the movie, it's shot literally just like a comic book. There's this one moment where midway during the movie, I was thinking to myself, that when Wonder Woman, she unlocked this this image file that Bruce Wayne had sent to her, she was looking for a picture and she couldn't find it, and found out that Lex Luthor had it. He sent it to her, and midway during the movie, when Doomsday is kind of being revealed and stuff like that, she opens it up. I was thinking to myself, that didn't make sense, because at the end of the movie, it would have been better that she would have found it. But from a comic book standpoint, that is something that kind of just randomly comes out into an out of place shot, and then it's kind of this short reveal, and then it goes straight back to it. So from that standpoint, this movie and the way that it was characterized and the way that it was even shot, it was shot like a comic book. Really interesting. So what I'm gonna try to do, like I said, I'm trying to go from the beginning all the way to the end and try to share with y'all anything that you kind of maybe missed. This is gonna be really hard to actually do in the car, but I do the best of my abilities. I might have to start cropping some of this out. So the next thing that I guess will be a good point would be the hidden things that you probably missed about why was it that Superman, what was the point of Superman being in the desert, okay? When Lois was in the desert, now one thing I will say about that sequence, there's a small Easter egg that most people implied that was Jimmy Olsen. That Jimmy Olsen was working with CIA, he was a spook. I think Zack Snyder did confirm that. That was Jimmy Olsen, that for whatever reason Jimmy Olsen was working with her. In the ultimate cut, there's going to be a point where you'll be able to actually figure out the information on that, about, like, I guess Jimmy Olsen having a conversation with her and saying what he was doing, defining his name. I'm not sure why they cropped that out. Maybe they want to bring Jimmy Olsen in later. I'm not really sure. But in the end result, like, he gets found out by the Russian guy and basically exposes his film, finds the transmitter, they kill him, they shoot him on sight. I don't necessarily like that, but that's a small Easter egg that Jimmy Olsen was there. Now, the reason I brought up that sequence is, in that sequence, for whatever reason, the Russian guy, they decided to go and proceed to systematically shoot all the people that were considered or pandered as terrorists in that region. Now, after that betrayal happened, that is when Lois is held up at gunpoint, and basically Superman, knowing what she is, comes in on her behalf. Now, the whole thing about that whole sequence, it was all staged. Lex did this all staged, and that's what I'm going to talk to y'all about. Probably points you missed, not necessarily Easter eggs. So what Lex did, he was testing the waters to see how Superman operates, not just under pressure, but under duress. So he tested it with Lois, putting Lois in the line of fire, seeing what he was capable of doing when her life was in jeopardy. Sure enough, he puts a man through 2 walls. It's not implied if he's dead or alive, but it does happen. And then the Russian guys that were there, they decide to kill everybody around it. And so it seems as though the Superman might have been responsible for that. And that was all staged. I'm not sure if anybody missed that, but this was all staged. Now, the thing about that was just one side of that, because Lois decides to go investigate the findings of the bullets and finds out that, Lex did, of course, do it. But the other part of that was Lex was testing the waters to see how he could break Superman. And that was the reason why he ended up doing it to begin with. But while he was doing that, on Batman's side, when the events happened in Man of Steel, Batman was out there, he saw what was going on, and his building not only got destroyed, but people that he cared about and loved, died. And so he ran into the location, he finds the guy, I think his name was Walter. Walter is a guy that lost his legs in the course of this whole situation. And basically, Batman lifts up the stuff off of him, says he's gonna have his back. It turned out, maybe 6 months later, I'm not sure, you can't tell how much time. Oh yeah, it was 18 months, I'm sorry. That when we find Walter again, he's upset, he's under duress. You see all these different pamphlets showing about Bruce Wayne and about Superman. And you're trying to figure out, why did Bruce not help him? Was it Bruce's guilt that, basically put him in that situation of, not caring? But you find out later on, before the U.S. Capitol destruction that happened, that actually Bruce had been sending him checks, right? And a lot of people thought that when those checks were being sent, the final one that shows, you killed your family, that was really kind of a Joker kind of move. But Lex played on Bruce's prejudice and his worry about people that he cared about or loved dying again. So what he did, he pitted him against Superman in that regard by showing him these different checks that were from this person, Walter. And every time that he would give him a check, he would get it sent back. And Bruce had thought that, this is the reason why he did this and stuff like that. But come to find out, Lex was the one that literally took Walter's checks that was needed for his ability to be able to survive, kept them, and made it look like Bruce didn't do it, so that he could add Walter be pitted against not only Superman, but Bruce Wayne. And then after that point, the last thing that Bruce sees is that you killed your family. And it was the perfect kind of thing that Lex literally did. And that's not even an acknowledgement of how he portrayed his role. This dude was just really systematically vigor. The other thing about that, I bring it back to the point about the kryptonite that was found by the young boy, and this was part of Lex's team. At a certain point, Batman finds that the kryptonite was something that could be used not just, to be taken or be destroyed, because basically Alfred asks, what are you going to do with it? He's like, well, I'm going to use it to kill Superman. And the thing was that after the U.S. Capitol building gets destroyed, which I'll get into that a little bit later, it's not really something that's spoiler related, other than in the U.S. Capitol building, when you see the lady, Mrs. Finch, I think it's Senator Finch, I think that's her name, when she first starts talking to the guy Walter, when she's out there, there's a statue that's up, and it actually looks like a statue of a superhero. And it is, to me, it was a straight nudge from The Dark Knight. If you looked at The Dark Knight Rises, there's a statue that's put up at the end of it after the death of Batman, supposedly. And I thought that was really interesting tidbit that nobody probably even saw, or they probably missed it. Anyway, but basically after that destruction happened and she died and everybody in there died, Bruce had went to Lex's establishment, and I'm not sure if that got misconstrued between different people, but Bruce went and literally took out, dismantled a whole bunch of people inside of Lex's location just to steal the kryptonite. But the thing was, if you notice, that's what Lex wanted. The whole point was that Lex wanted Bruce to use the kryptonite against Superman. He had been pitting them against each other to start with. And the thing was that there's two different events that pushed them over the edge. For Clark, he had saw on the news, you know, Batman branding people and this and that, but there were pictures that were sent to him before he decided to go and just get in the middle of Batman's race to try to find the kryptonite and messed up his car and confronted him. Before that had happened, Lex had sent him pictures specifically about the guy that he had branded dying in prison. And it could be implied that Bruce did that. It could be implied that Batman did that. Regardless of the fact that that was enough for Superman to do this, you know, and decide to put a stop to it. But not just that, he's already under a lot of duress. And I didn't realize that from Man of Steel, they didn't explain it as much as they could have, but he's been feeling guilt from the lives that have been lost before. It's like he patterned himself on trying to save as many people as possible because of the lives that he had lost before, such as his dad, such as those thousands of people that died and whatchamacallit. And then after the Capitol building, that's when you really understand it, because he had said to Lois, he's like, I've been chasing the ghost's dream. Like, I was never the hero that they really wanted me to be. And not just that, this is a huge kind of, I guess, spoiler alert, or not spoiler alert, but Easter egg. He decides to leave at that point, and he goes to the Arctic. I was thinking that this was going to be, you know, where he's going to go to the Fortress of Solitude, or he's going to create it, or something's going to happen. Instead, he talks to Jonathan Kent. Jonathan Kent tells him this really interesting story in a perspective of loss and guilt that he had felt. And he had asked his dad, even though his dad really wasn't there, does the guilt ever go away? And to his answer, he's like, yeah, it does, in time. When he met his mom, when he met Martha, that was his world, okay? Now remember that word, this is his world, because it's going to be something that I'm going to point to something really specific that happens to Batman. But at that point, I was thinking that maybe this is the ground zero area when he gets brought back to life, that there may be his place of solitude. Maybe this is where he's been going. You know, it's not been implied that there's a fortress, but this is the place of his solitude. This is where he needed to be at peace, talk to his dad. And that, to me, is a great significance, because that's what happens in the comics, even though it's actually an actual fortress and he's talking to Rel or his mom. Instead, he's actually in the Arctic talking to him. It was really out of nowhere. I think that the ultimate cut is going to have some more implied to that, but we'll get back to that in a second. So, with this is his world, right? Before, the thing that sets Bruce over the edge to want to kill him, it wasn't the U.S. Capitol thing. That was just the added nudge of what to do in that moment. What the real deal was when he was trying to take the decrypted file that he had taken from the guy, and even with the cell phone, there was something that happened with that. Well, in the beginning, Bruce had found the Russian dude in the cage fighting area. He decided to copy his phone information and clone the phone, got the information, and was able to trace certain things back. I'll get to that in a little bit, because there's something that happens that people have been saying that this was never explained, but if you remember, you'll be able to know. I'll go back to that later on. So much going on through my head, and I'm driving, sorry. But what happens is he goes and tries to do the decryption after he finally gets the information that Wonder Woman had given back to him. And when he's going through the decryption, it got to 2% at a certain point, and then the dream sequence happens. Now, this dream sequence, this is the big Easter egg that most people don't know. In the dream sequence, there's the mega symbol that you actually see. When Batman is looking over the edge, looking at Metropolis, looking at the rest of the city, it's a wasteland, okay? Now, the thing about it is, there are two different factions going on. Batman's group that have a interesting circular emblem on them. I can't really describe what that was, but they're working for the same exact faction. It's probably the faction of the heroes that are left and that are remaining. But anyway, it was really reminiscent of Injustice, Gods Among Us. Like from the costume that you're gonna see when Flash comes up to later on, to even the way that Batman has. But there is a nightmare version of, you know, Bruce's outfit. It's called Desert Batman, which I'll go into that a little bit later on. I'm not gonna go into this here, because the thing about the tidbit is that Bruce was trying to find his nuclear deterrent, which was kryptonite. Come to find out, inside the box, we were thinking it was a bomb. It really was just for play. There was no kryptonite in there. It was just some lights that were illuminating, and there was a timer on it, and that was really it. The guy betrays him. But the thing about the Easter egg that I wanted to bring up, that nobody's really kind of said, is that there's a moment before he opens it up, before it go out of it, you see this person that has this mask guard around them, and hair kind of spiked up, and then they focus on him for a second, then they focus to the guard that's behind him, that ends up being one of Superman's henchmen, okay? I think that that's either Nightwing, could have been Tim Drake, could have been somebody else, but I think it had to do with one of the robbers. The only reason why I bring that up is because of the fact that Batman, he freaks out. He yells out in horror. Like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, in war, yeah, you're going to get upset, your men get killed, but it felt like it was more than just that. And my theory is that might have been Nightwing. Anyway, there's another person that when he's in mid-fight, is a girl, he holds her by the hand, she pretends to shoot and fire. It seems as though he's been working with this group for a while, and I'm thinking that this is part of the Bat family. Either way, we'll see where that goes. But the thing I want to bring up about this Easter egg is not only did you see the Omega symbol, but you saw fire raising up. And I think that what was going on is that Apocalypse was trying to be recreated over Earth. At this point, Superman was siding with Darkseid. I think the Darkseid and Superman were working together, and it's been branded that Earth is now basically under the reign and under the influence for Darkseid or Superman. That he has full reign to do whatever he wants to. Case in point, like having the men that have the symbols on them. And if you remember the animated series, this happens as well, where Darkseid actually takes over Superman's mind. And I'm not sure if Superman's mind has been taken over. It seems as though he's willingly doing this. And what happens is they finally capture Batman, and Superman gets there, scary as crap. Decides to burn 2 people to the side of him, burn 2 people to the left of him, and he just proceeds to just move right into Batman, taking his mask off. And the thing that he says to him is that she was my world. You took her away from me. And I was like, this is a direct connection to what Pa Kent has said to Superman, is that is his world. Later on in the movie, he has said to Lois directly, you are my world. Okay? Now, so I was thinking that it might have been Martha, or it could be Lois, but I'm pretty sure, I'm inclined to believe that it's Lois, because what happens is, when he gets out of that dream sequence, after Superman proceeds to push into his heart, pull his chest out, I'm not really sure, he wakes up and he sees Barry Allen the Flash, and like I said, he's not shaven, he looks like he's war-ridden. Even his suit, it's like a I guess an Iron Man kind of thing that comes over him. And the words that he says were really interesting, and I don't know if I can go back into reference of them. I'm gonna have to try to memorize it by myself, even though I wrote it. I think what he said was that Lois is the key. That's one thing. Lois is the key. He has said that everything that you are thinking about him is true. He said, make sure you use the suit. And then the last thing he said was, find us. And so if you remember the very end of the movie, when he was talking to Wonder Woman after Superman dies, he had asked, you know, what was the reasoning behind, like, you wanted to get everybody together? And it's based on an implying of what Wally said, make sure you bring us all together. And then that's when the decryption happens. He sees all the different metahumans. Other thing about the metahumans that you don't know is that in Man of Steel, there's a comic book, there's a prequel comic book where it basically implies that Kara Zor-El, or Clark Kent's, Kal-El from Krypton, his cousin, goes ahead of him centuries ago. And basically they try to go to this exploration in Earth. They get into pods that allow them to be cryogenically put into stasis. And Kara gets taken out early because some kind of tyrant up there on the ship messes up her pod, and then they end up crash landing. And what ends up happening was she realized that a lot of her friends had been killed because of this. Now, she stops the guy, and they ended up landing on Earth, and she gets out. I'm not sure if she killed the guy or not, but either way, she got out of the pod. And if you remember the end of Man of Steel, when he actually gets into the ship, there's a pod that's open. Now, the theory was, when Lex had said to Senator Finch, when he was asking for permission to be able to use the ship, be able to go and do what he had to do as far as a nuclear deterrent with kryptonite, she had asked him, are you referring to the metahuman formula or theory? Basically, what the theory is that when Kara Zor-El or whoever the person was, the girl that landed, that she mixed bread with certain people, and that part of her DNA transmutated certain people, like such as the Amazonians, probably the Atlanteans, and other people, as opposed to them actually just getting their powers, that they were technically like mutants. And so I think that's where the metahuman theory actually comes into play. And that goes straight back to, like what I said, as far as Bruce's perspective of what to do next moving forward. Small tidbit. I'm not sure if anybody even remembered about the metahuman thing or understood about the theory, but that was where the actual theory came from. That was not talked about in the movie. What's next? Gosh, I've gone through so much. Joe, you're awesome for holding up the camera. It's been like 20 minutes, so give Joe a comment with the thumbs up or something down below. Let's see what else. I got a lot of stuff. Man, this is so hard. Oh, there was something that was said beforehand when Alfred was talking to Bruce after that point, after the dream sequence. Bruce had said in his heart, I'm going to take this man out, okay? Now, that was only after when the Flash had met him, because he realized the depths of this man's potential. And not just that, Barry Allen had left nothing more to the opposition that, okay, everything he said, everything you believe is true, okay? Now, I think later on down the line, that this is going to be something interesting that's going to be pulled into, I'm not sure if it's the Injustice side, or if it's going to be more so like the death of Superman, what happens after Superman is gone. Because after that point, after Superman dies in the death of Superman, something comes back. It's a cyborg. Something comes back. If you go into the animated version, there was actually a clone version that Lex had created. Not sure if they're going to go that route, or if it's just going to be straight line, something totally different. But I'm thinking that what we get back is not going to be that same Superman. I think that the Superman that people are going to see, that there's something in the casket that, because there was two different caskets. There's one casket that was put on the Kent farm, and there's another one that's put in the center of Metropolis. And I think what's going to come out of that casket is going to be something totally different. Now, I'm not sure when that's going to come into effect. I'm not sure if that's going to be in the Justice League. We'll see. But anyway, after that point, Alfred was talking to him, and he was asking him, he was saying, this wasn't about, the dirty bomb. I was like, what are you talking about, a dirty bomb? Before, they were trying to look for this, what they thought was a person, ended up being a ship that actually has a location. Bruce had said to him, alluded that there's a dirty bomb that he thinks that somebody is having that's going to blow up Metropolis or blow up Gotham. Turns out it wasn't. It ended up being the kryptonite, and that was just something that was a small nudge that I don't think got brought back up. The thing about Lex. Now, a lot of people don't know that supposedly this is Alexander Lex Luthor Jr. Now, in the whole thing was, why is it that Lex is doing all this, okay? And this is not an Easter egg. This is more so just food for thought from observation standpoint by me. This is more so theoretical. For me, when I looked and I saw Lex in the beginning, his prime objective was to basically combat a god. That's really the baseline of his perspective. Because when he was with Zod's body, when he pulled him into the chamber, which I'll go into the chamber and that whole process in a little bit because it's something that alludes to Brainiac and something more. But basically when he pulls Zod's body into that chamber, he decides that that you realize that he was upset or grieving on the fact of Zod being dead. And now, I mean, it shows that he's like psychopathic. He had said, "You flew too close to the sun," or whatever, "you poor fool," or whatever. But it was like, I guess he had this mutual understanding that this is somebody that could have taken out what everybody deems as being God, which is Superman. And I mean, it's really implied throughout most of the film that this guy is more so Messiah versus somebody that's actually a hero. That's a really awesome debate. But basically, from my perspective, I think that Lex, his father, was such an interesting dictator. And I'm not sure if he was bald or if this is the Lex that we all know. They never actually show what Alexander Lex Luthor Sr. looked like. So we might end up getting a different Lex later on. I doubt it, since they made Jesse Eisenberg's character bald. Not really sure. But either way, it's shown in even his dialogue that his dad had beat him, had abused him. And I think that came into dialogue when he was talking with Lois, or even with Clark. But it was like he wanted to be not only number one, but he had an inferiority complex as far as the perspective of how everybody saw him. That could even be displayed when he was actually trying to do the speech. It was like he was trying to be so inquisitive and so smart, he was deemed looking like a weirdo, you know? And it's like he got this interesting twitch and nudge about everything he says, but then he uses all these different puns. Like, he pulls puns from the Bible, he pulls puns from story rhymes, like all these different kind of things. Like, I think one of the interesting things that he had said was like, the mother of a demon must be branded a witch. I was like, oh my gosh, like he's insane. But the thing about him is, like, everybody was trying to figure out what was his prime objective, why he wanted to kill Superman. It wasn't so much that he just wanted to kill the alien. It wasn't so much he was upset the fact that this alien cost him money. He obviously didn't care about that, because midway during the movie, when he creates Doomsday, Doomsday was about to punch him. He was prepared to die. He didn't care. Even when Batman, of all people, the scariest motherfucker up here, was about to brand him, he's like, no, it's whatever, you know? And so you can tell that there's a screw loose from his perspective, but he's so smart and so intelligent that he not only does not know how to connect with people, he does not care to connect with humanity or even himself or his livelihoods at all. Like, for him just to kill everybody, and he took Mercy, which is one of his prime people that protect him and help him, sent her back into the U.S. Capitol just to make sure people thought that he was going to be there, and sacrifice her just like that. That's classic Lex Luthor. If you even look at Superman Doomsday, the movie, same thing happens. So it's just really interesting how his psychology is just so warped. It was actually something that I found very fascinating. So, not so much like his all-aroundness, but just his philosophy and the way that he articulated his things, his inferiority complex, his damagedness. And even like he's the direct opposite of Bruce and Superman, or Bruce and Clark, but yet at the same exact time he still was on an equal playing field with them, because he put it the best of anybody against each other. So I thought that was really interesting. Now, the point about what I was talking about with the chamber, when he actually takes General Zod's fingertips, puts it on the panel, this is after the kryptonite gets stolen. I think this is all, he was timing everything to a T. Like, he was systematically doing things, and I was thinking, more people are going to think that this guy is probably better suited as a Joker or better suited as a Riddler, but this is just a different version, which I don't, whatever. But anyway, when he gets to, when he gets inside of the chamber, he asks the computer, basically, like, what do you want to know? What can I find out? This, that, and other. And the computer says, I have the knowledge of 100,000 worlds. And this is not just, you know what I'm saying, like, from one century. Like, this is decades worth of information. So the thing about it is, we don't know, and I think that probably even in the Ultimate Cut, they're not going to show how much knowledge he actually gained. Nor did they actually show the ship being destroyed. So what I mean by that is, there's two different things that could have happened, okay? He could have gotten imparted on or implanted a lot of information without him actually having to just kind of regurgitate it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it could have been implanted to his brain in a certain kind of way. I'm not sure the technology on this thing, but it's really clear that he knows who Darkseid is. The very end, he was talking about he's coming and he's hungry and there's no way to stop it. Tick tock, tick tock. That's what he was saying at the very end. So it's implied that he knows the dark side is coming. So he had another ace up his hand, even if Doomsday had fallen. But his end goal worked because Superman died, and that's what he wanted. Now everybody is completely in the dirt. It's like, I don't know, it's interesting. But anyway, I just wanted to bring up the fact that from him gaining knowledge from the ship is how he knew about Darkseid, and from him gaining knowledge about that is how to actually use the technology to be able to regain that back. So it's like, how does he get that much information or even have knowledge of those two things if something wasn't imparted into his mind? We'll see later on, I guess. So the second thing that I wanted to bring up is the brain interactive construct, or Brainiac. When he got there, there was 3 different lights. Now I saw 2 other orbs to the side, but to me it felt like, man, this computer, if he decided to, he could take this computer and try to make a portable version of it, or give it the illusion of what to do outside of its capabilities. And I'm not sure if he has the means to do that or the technology to do that, but I can see Lex Luthor doing something like that. And this machine or this ship could end up becoming the brain interactive construct. And I think that'll be actually really interesting. But to me, the 3 orbs that I saw, I thought that was an interesting little Easter egg, or either foreshadowing or something like that might happen a little bit later on. Especially with it having the knowledge specifically of 100,000 worlds. So, what was else? What else? Oh, Diana Prince, or Wonder Woman. The thing about her, I know that a lot of people were like, what happened? Like, why was she, all over the place and going back and forth? Why was she even decided to leave? The reason why she even came to Gotham or Metropolis and tried to get to location, she had said it plain and simple that she wanted something from Lex Luthor. She wanted the picture showing her actual age. Found out Lex Luthor had all these different things, which I'll bring up that probably at my end of all this whole entire discussion, is that she wanted the picture. And once she got the picture, that was it for her. She had already said at the very end that she had kind of forgotten about mankind. She decided, that's it. Like, I'm done, And so what she was going to do, she was going to leave. And I'm not sure if people didn't catch that or not, but after she got her picture, she was on the plane out. Now, she was being convicted because of the fact of all this destruction and the capability of this monster on not just Metropolis or Gotham. But after the nuke went down and that didn't stop it, you find out this thing was going to keep getting stronger and stronger. She realized that she had a responsibility to the world because, her paradise, anybody, or it was any location of Earth, could be at a detriment. So she decided, okay, I'm going to put back on the mantle and try to protect people again, which I thought that was a really awesome thing about her character, but I don't think that it got missed in a lot of the translation of the film. The other thing, this is more so really specific, because I'm going to tie in 3 different things. I'm going to tie in the information about the cameos, and I'm also going to tie in information about the comics. I'm going to talk about the comics first, okay? If you know the comics, The Dark Knight Returns, every single thing about this movie took from The Dark Knight Returns, to Superman getting nuked, to Batman going and doing the things that he was doing, becoming really gritty and gruff. If you want to really understand the capability of Batman, go and read Dark Knight Returns. This man not only is not really caring about people's livelihoods, but he doesn't care in terms of anything goes. I mean, he technically did all but kill the Joker. He broke people's bones. He was really ruthless and really vile and violent, and that's the kind of Batman we actually got in this movie. That's the reason why it's so different. Even in the nightmare mode, this is just nightmare mode, he was using guns, but he would never use that in real life. And a lot of people don't know that even that sniper rifle that he had, that was just something that he used to implant that. But it's taken straight from The Dark Knight Returns. Like, even the fight sequence with, they did everything except the electrocution. They didn't electrocute Superman, but everything from the fight was all pre-set up. The thing I loved about it is the way that the kryptonite, it had a different effect. It wasn't a long-term effect once he inhaled it. It actually started kind of going and coming. I really love that information. The thing about The Dark Knight Returns is that it only took one arrow, and that kind of put him out like that. And they kind of use this multiple times. Instead of it being the Green Arrow to shoot the arrow to do it, he actually added the grenade form, and I thought that was really interesting nudge and change. The other thing that I'll talk about is Flashpoint. If you know the story of Flashpoint, you know that there's a war in Flashpoint going on between the Amazonians and the Atlanteans, and at the same exact time, all because of what Barry did. Barry decides he wants to go and save his mom. And because he went and saved his mom, it changed and altered the entire universe. Now, I'm not saying that this is the same exact thing that happens. I think it's more so the injustice side. But I think that by him going back and telling Bruce what he told him, that changed the course of history again. So there's a different Earth that's going to be alternate to what we have seen because of those events. And it ties directly to Flashpoint. It's like, would Superman have died and Lois would have died in the different situations? Like, if he never told Bruce, you know, what would have really happened? And I think that it takes a straight nudge to the Flashpoint comic books. I definitely recommend you go and check that out. Now, the cameos. I'll talk about one specific because other people don't understand what happened. The Cyborg cameo, when that actually came up, and his dad, Silas, was trying to bring his son back to life. Now, we don't know if it was an accident or whatever happened in the movie. And of course, the movie in the comic books is shown exactly what happens to Victor Stone and why he's in this state. But in this one, it just shows him trying to keep his son alive as long as possible. After about, 100 different tests or situations, he gets to about maybe 136 or something like that. And at that point, he goes and he finds this device. Now, if you look at the movie, this is based on the Justice League 52 comics, Justice League War. And Justice League War basically it's around just Darkseid coming in and his parademons, but then they use a boom tube to go back and forth. Now, one of the things that they had was this box, and these boxes, they opened up a portal to go somewhere. Now, the same exact box in Justice League War and in the comics is what helped Silas to be able to regain his sons back to life, because he basically had him in a tube, and after that box merged with the technology he already had, it started creating and forming an actual body that Victor Stone or Cyborg, so he could be created. And at that point, he has the ability of being able to go back and forth between the boom tubes within the Justice League War. So that's a direct connection. And I think that box, I think that's exactly what it is. I don't know how he ended up getting it from a Darkseid connection, but this might be a great tie-in if they're going to do that route with the Justice League Part 1 or Part 2 to be able to connect Doomsday with it. Okay? The other thing that I saw, this is the 5th time that I actually saw it when I actually realized this, is I disliked, the Flash cameo because he was hair all out and this, and I was like, isn't Barry supposed to be a blonde or whatever? But anyway, that's beside the point. When you see, you're gonna miss it. I can almost promise you, if you haven't seen the movie twice, you're gonna miss it. When you see the Flash up there, right, and somebody's trying to rob the location, they show 2 different cameras back to back, right? In one camera, shows the person getting mugged, and then it shows him with the glass of milk. What happens is, at a certain second, right, within a second, he goes and stops him and goes back, right? The thing about it, when I watched the 10th of the second, even though they didn't slow it down, the glass of milk was still in the air when he hit the person and when he came back. So by the time he hit the person, he came back, he grabbed the milk and kept on doing what he was doing. So the glass of milk was still in the air. If you haven't watched it multiple times, I'd recommend you go back and see it, because there's so many things I missed personally. I mean, it's just really interesting. I guess the last thing that I'll bring up is the 2 different emotional moments for me. In the comic books, it's always been talked about, like, why did they get so lazy as to name Martha Kent and Martha Wayne the same name, In this movie, this added so much significance because it's like a comic book. They added a lot of emphasis to the word from his dad, from Jeffrey D. Morgan, saying Martha. He didn't say Bruce, he didn't talk to Bruce, he just said Martha. Martha puts herself in line line of fire for Bruce, gets shot in the head. Okay? Her eyes literally glaze over and she dies. When Bruce had the ability of killing Superman, he said, save Martha. That moment, it connected what for years, a lot of people were like, why did they do that? It made so much more significance just in that moment. For me personally, as a comic book person, to know that, wow, they use this as a significance of understanding and comprehension, of preservation of life, you know, as opposed to somebody trading off a life. And so that's where it switched gears from the Dark Knight Returns version to making this on its own something more of an impactful moment. Not just that, I go back to the very end. I've said it before. That was one of the things I said in the beginning. You're my world. That's what he said to Lois before he decided to pick up the spear that obviously was already hurting him, was killing him, to drive it into Doomsday. Now, to be fair, Wonder Woman used her lasso, held him down. Bruce used the last pellet that he had to push in, just stop basically Doomsday from blowing up one last time, just enough time for, you know, Superman to dive in and plunge the kryptonite spear into Doomsday's body. Okay? When that happens, you know, Doomsday takes the spike that was left and put it into Clark's chest, his heart, basically. Instead of Clark, this is the thing that is an emotional moment to me, okay? It's a sacrificial thing, first of all, to take your body, allow it to be skewered through, and put it through somebody else just to stop them from doing what they're doing. But here's the significance of all of this, right? In the first movie, Clark witnessed people in his hometown, people all over the world. He did everything he could from the ability he had for his first time being Superman, trying to preserve life. He couldn't do it, okay? He couldn't do it. And the only way that he was able to actually stop this from happening is killing the last member of his home world, which was General Zod. Killed him, flat out. Terrible, you know? But from that point, he's been guilt-ridden to the point that he has to do everything in preserving life. The thing about this one, there was not that much life lost in this. Matter of fact, there was none, to be quite honest with you. Because when I was thinking about, you know, when Doomsday blew himself up on a little island, and then when Batman took him back to the dock, even Diana was like, why did you bring him back? He was like, because this area is closed off. There's nobody here. So even though Doomsday was bursting into flames, nobody died, okay? Now, if Superman had not done what he did, right, in sacrificing himself, he decided, all right, if I can't win this, I will sacrifice my life to preserve life. It was like this ultimate lesson he had to learn, that if you have to preserve your world or the person that you love, you have to sacrifice yourself. And that's the thing that Lex didn't understand, or he probably did. You know what? Actually, he did. Wow. I just realized that. That's epiphany on and of itself. He sacrificed himself because of the action that he did before, the guilt that he felt before, in order to stop Doomsday. Now, I'm not sure, I'm not going to give this all credit to Lex, but in doing that, he did get his objective. He killed Superman. He killed the god. And the thing about it was a self-sacrificing thing. It makes him a martyr, but Lex didn't care. Either way, I bring that up to say that the actions that happened in Man of Steel and everything he's done up to this point has led him to that specific moment, that no matter what, he wasn't going to allow anybody else to die at that hand. And so by sacrificing himself, that's the reason why he did that. And so I think that was one of the most pivotal things that people miss that I wanted to bring up, is that this man had been continuously feeling guilt and lack of understanding, but in this movie, he didn't. There was no real innocent lives lost other than what happened in the U.S. Capitol building, okay? And that was all on Lex. That was all on Lex. He wasn't gonna allow that to happen again. Anyway, I'm trying to think if I got anything else. I don't think I got anything else. I'm gonna look through my notes for 1 second. She was my world. Clark killed. Reporting. Gotham battle. Mother of God. Look at the time. I thought that was really funny. Lex had a lot of interesting, cool lines. I really liked Lex in this one. Let's see. Wonder Woman 100 years ago. I think that was about it. Did over the cyborg thing. The world. only makes sense if you, oh yeah, the phone had locked on. Oh yeah, that was the last thing. This isn't a significant moment, but I wanted to make sure I touch on every small thing that you might have missed. Because I've seen this movie 5 times, I want to go ahead and just give it all out, spew it out. Anyway, there's a certain moment after Bruce decides not to kill Clark. He says to Clark, "I'm gonna protect your mom. I'm gonna make you a promise. I'm gonna protect your mom." He's like, "No, I got this. No, I got this. Martha's not dying tonight." And I was like, "Wow, this is dope," you know. But after that point, he decides he changes outfits. I'm not sure time frame, how he had an extra outfit and stuff like that, but whatever. He goes into the ship, the Batwing, as it were. And once he gets into the Batwing, you hear Alfred on the comm. And I was thinking, Alfred said, "Well, you know, I found some position of the Russian guy." And I was like, that didn't make sense. I went back and I realized when Bruce was in the Fight Club with the Russian guy, he cloned the drive, and he also used GPS to pinpoint where the location was, because Alfred, the 5th time I actually watched it, I listened to him, he said, "I triangulated the location of the Russian from his cell phone, from the fact that we know where he's at." And that makes up the awesome thing about their chemistry. The things that Bruce misses, or things that he's verging on the edge of, you know, darkness ultimately, he's always able to come back from Alfred. The thing about this one though, Alfred knew he couldn't change Bruce's mind, because it was preservation of life, and Bruce was deteriorating, you know, but he was right there after Bruce pulled himself back out of the darkness, and that's how he was able to pinpoint it. But in the movie, in the confounds of the movie, first time I watched it, I was like, how the heck, you know, did Alfred find out the location so fast? But that was how he was able to do it. So that was probably the last thing that I had. I'm gonna think real quick if there's anything else. Oh, well, at the end, the dirt rising up, it implies that Superman's gonna be back. But like I said, I don't think that Superman's gonna immediately just pop out of that. I think that'd be a cop-out. I think what's gonna happen is there's gonna be a clone version of Superman that's gonna end up coming back. If you wanna know reference to that, go and check out The Death of Superman, and that'll be able to point some references to that. Or if you want to look at Superman Doomsday, the movie, that would be really great. Like I said, The Dark Knight Returns, Flashpoint, Justice League War, I think those are all really good nudges. As far as the cameos, like I said, I really more appreciate the Flash one. The Aquaman one, you can see he has an amazing burst of speed and strength, even though it was really kind of a slow paced kind of scene. But the Ultimate Edition, from my understanding, Jenna Maloney, she's gonna have an interesting role in it, and there's gonna be so much more in the confounds of things that were missing in this movie. There's 30 minutes that were missing from the movie, whether you know it or not. And I think that a lot of the bits, even the theoretical things that I brought up, as far as my perspective, I think they're gonna come to an interesting fold. And I think the director's cut is gonna be more of the complete version that everybody's kind of aspiring to and looking for. So make sure, what is it? I can't believe I forgot it. I think it's June it's either July or June when the release of Batman vs Superman is going to come out for the Ultimate Edition. So I highly recommend you go and check that out. Hopefully this brings some interesting insights, any Easter eggs, any impliements of things to come. I think I brought over everything from Jimmy Olsen to Brainiac to Doomsday to Darkseid. I didn't talk about Doomsday in detail because for me, a lot of people are like, well, how is the fact that Doomsday was created? If you look at the animated version of the Justice League, or even like Superman, there's a form of Doomsday that was actually done different. It's been a lot of different ways, I'll say, from the comic book to Batman versus Superman, the movie, to Superman Doomsday, where Lex was directly connected to the creation of Doomsday. The look and the aesthetic of it is that Doomsday will change in form each time he dies. So my position to tell you, even though there's a kryptonite spirit that's in him, once that's taken out, if it ever gets taken out, he can easily regenerate. Now that's going to be something that is a weakness for everybody else, that he's never going to have to worry about that anymore. So each time that he dies, he comes back. That's one of the biggest things about Doomsday. He's really unkillable in that sense, and at the same time, he's going to be a strong hindrance to Superman But yeah, that's the only thing I can think of more. But yeah, hopefully I gave y'all some insight, things you missed, any kind of notable Easter eggs from the movie. And yeah, I just want to go ahead and output all of that knowledge to y'all and spew it out. This is JVS SEL 0320 representing JVS. Y'all have a blessed night. I'll talk to y'all soon. The Walking Dead tonight. Peace, y'all.